Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have an opportunity to work on another one of the reels that Scott has found out on the West Coast flea markets. This one is a very large Olympic reel. It's the Olympic LGVO 600. It's a nice example of a reel made in Japan, probably in the 1970s. It's got the metal casing, metal spool, and large salt water. The only problem that this reel has, from a collectability standpoint, is it's got a chip in the reel foot, but that won't stop it from fishing. And so let's show you how to take this reel apart, how to service it, and how to keep it running for years to come. We're going to start by removing the exterior pieces and parts. That includes the spool. And as I do this, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like the art of reel repair. And if you like to learn about the fishing reels, their histories, how they're made, and how to service them, well, this is the place for you. And if you do subscribe, use the notification button. That will help you to see the ones that I'm posting. I work on all kinds of fishing reels. You basically are looking over my shoulder and what comes into my shop. And some days it'll be a saltwater reel, some day it'll be a conventional, some day it'll be, well, something else. So best to hit the notification button and select the ones that you'd like to see. Well, I took the screw off the back here. I'm assuming that there's a reason why the handle needs to be what it is. And it looks like we have another tie-down screw on top of that. So let's go for a screwdriver, the appropriate size blade, and let's remove that piece as well. So this has got what I'll call a through shaft on it, and in order to remove the handle, you need to remove the other side. So don't be fooled when you see that there's a button that's not moving on this side. A lot of times that you see that button not moving and you assume it's a screw and handle. That's not the case with this one. All right, we should be able to pull this out of this side now. Oh boy, that's over tightened. Wow, that's got a lot of old grease and grime on there. You can see it was a little bit of a wrestling match coming out. And so take care of the problems as soon as you identify them. It won't be a problem when you go to reinstall. But there's some old grease, and I suspect that's probably going to be the theme of this reel, is that we're going to have a lot of old grease. When I take my my fishing reels apart for service, I always like to put them in a parts tray, and that way I know where the pieces and parts are when I'm done. And my parts tray is the bottom of a fast food container. My suspicion here is that this is, oh, real good. So this handle, I thought was going to be jammed up with grease. You turn the handle like a quarter of a turn and you can collapse the handle for easy storage. So just turn it a quarter of a turn. And what I did was I used a penetrating oil. I used WD-40 to just get the old greases out of there so that it turns easy. If you think that or if you thought that that was one of those screw-in handles, it's not. I will show it to you one more time. Turn it, fold it, and I'm going to put that in my parts tray for now. All right, there's 3 screws on this side plate. I'm going to make sure that my anti-reverse is in the off position, because sometimes when you go to remove your main gears and the like, if that is engaged, it becomes a problem. So we're going to take the 3 screws out from here. And Olympic was one of the first manufacturers when the movement of reels from the U.S. to Japan and Japanese manufacturing occurred. So if you look, there's some reels that came out as manufactured in Japan for store brands, for example, like a King Neptune or something like that, J.C. Higgins for Sears, those kinds of reels. And behind the scenes are actually being made by Olympic and others. And that was in the 70s when I guess the first offshoring wave occurred. A lot of us have mixed feelings on the fishing reels made in China, but that's been an interesting journey to China. It didn't start with the U.S. sending stuff to China. It went from the U.S. to Japan. When Japan's labor market got expensive, it went to Korea. And even some of the Japanese firms like Shimano offshored to Malaysia And eventually they just keep chasing the cheap labor and wound up in China. So, interesting little travel log there. We have 3 side plate screws. They're all the same. I can remove those, put those off to the side, and our case should come out now. Well, this is one of the reasons why you should service your reels regularly. This is just a lot of old dried grease, and that dried grease will have an effect on the performance of the reel. Even though this one is turning pretty nice, you can see how it's starting to accumulate on the metal pieces, and we have some dried grease in the tracks that are probably stopping that. The next thing we want to do then is we want to remove the 2 screws that are holding the axle shaft onto the crosswind block, and it looks like I would do best to go to a micro screwdriver for that. They're very thin slots here, and you want to match your screwdriver to the slots. If you don't do that, the problem that you're going to run into is you're going to butterfly or flare the spots, and those slots, well, it'll make it hard to get that out the next time. I was just checking. There is no ball bearing on this side. The case is acting as the bushing in this. Again, I'm going to take both of these out. I'll assume that both of these are the same, but you know what they say about assume. Being short, don't. Okay, 2 of these come out, and they're not. So how do you like that? I don't know why that is, but the top one is shorter than the bottom one. Go figure. Just when I assumed that they would be the same. All right, we're going to pull the axle shaft out now, and I think the story with this reel is dried grease. Wow, that's kind of tough. You have to keep swinging it. Eventually you will get it out. And if you're having trouble, here's the thing to do with this. Once you disconnect the piece, go ahead and put the rotor back, the spool back on. Use that as a knob. Pull it up and out that way. See, you learned something. All right. I'm going to remove this and put this back off to the side here. And I think what we said is the theme. We've got some dried grease in the case here, and what you want to do is take something that can clean that off. I'm going to use 4-0 steel wool here, and we're just going to wipe that all down. And when you wipe it down, just give it a feel. Make sure that what you're feeling there is a nice smooth surface without pits. All right, now we can take the main gear out. You can see it's just a lot of dried grease in here. We're going to remove the crosswind block, and we're going to remove the crosswind gear. Now, interestingly, the back end of this one, there's a couple of things going on here. The back end of it actually has a bushing in the case. And look at this, we have a transfer gear back here. Very innovative at the time. So what that does is that eliminates or reduces the stress of going from the main gear right to the crosswind gear. It's kind of an assist, and you'll see that on a couple of the more expensive reels of today, like the Shimano's and that. You'll have a wheel that will share the burden there. But boy, back in the day, this is pretty innovative for them. All right, we'll just clean that up. I'm going to use a spray of penetrating oil just to finish this off here. Let it sit. While we go up top, these 3 here, we're going to clean them. We'll go up top and we'll remove the piece for the rotor. All right, that looks like it's a big one. Appears to be a 15 millimeter. It is. As soon as you can work that nut, take it off by hand the rest of the way. And when that hand nut is off, then you can remove the rotor, and this is why you want to do that, because we have a lot of dried grease under there. This is a good place to tell you to take pictures now. The pictures are going to help you when it comes time to reinstall because if you remove the parts, sometimes you lose the orientation on that. And if you lose the orientation, well, you're going to be in trouble. All right, we have two sets here. We have the collar washer, which goes over the bearing, and we have the collar. And you can see underneath here, that's where your anti-reverse dog is going to intersect with that click ratchet. So this is a little bit different as well. A lot of times you're going to see that click ratchet on the post of the axle shaft. Not here, that's part of the spool assembly. And you need to make sure that that is clean and functioning well. While I have this out, we'll just throw a little bit of oil. We'll work that in. You do not need to take the bail off if you're just servicing a reel. Just work the oils and greases in. That will be plenty. Next up, we want to remove the pinion gear, which should have a bearing on it. And I think what we're going to find here is that it may be grease choked as well. I'm just going to put a little bit of grease up top here. I don't know who serviced this last, but they were certainly liberal with the oils and greases. And I think probably best to do is just take these two pieces and parts, put them in the parts tray so they don't get lost. As we do that, the rotor nut can go on the rotor. These two, I'm going to leave those three main gears up there for cleaning. Well, there's 3 screws here, and just like the other one, I want to make sure that all of those screws are the same. So we'll go ahead and remove them. That's a good place to take a picture, because sometimes these collars are not even, that they're offset, and you want to know which side goes where. Sometimes there's a flat side to them. Sometimes the up and down is a stagger. It's interesting how these have come to be. Right now those two look the same. I've also got them sitting in a little puddle of that WD-40 which came out. And we should be good here. We are, all 3 of those are the same. There's a little bit of grease on top of that, so let's clean this one off while we have it off the reel. If I left it on, it probably would tell me that that's the one that's facing the anti-reverse. Alright, that goes in. I'm going to take the 3 of these and put those in my parts tray as well. And always the moment of truth now. Does this come out easily? Well, it does. Aren't we lucky? I'm going to spray this bearing down with the WD-40. It's got a little bit of old grease on the top. It's a shielded bearing, so we shouldn't have any issues there with trying to remove that. Also another little coat onto the anti-reverse dog so that we can clean that mechanism up. We'll do that right now. And again, this is another one. You do not need to remove the anti-reverse dog unless you find that it's not working properly. You just saw me kind of knock this spring set off. If you're watching this video because you're trying to figure out how the anti-reverse dog spring works, there's a hook around the top of this, goes underneath. There's a coil spring, a couple of loops on that. On the end of the coil, it steps down and it lodges inside the post here, just in case you were wondering. Well, taking that stuff off gives us the opportunity to clean underneath. And so much of reel repair is just this, a reel servicing. It's going in, it's understanding how the reel is made, making sure that it's cleaned, inspect for the parts. If there's broken parts that you can replace, you want to go ahead and do that. In this case, that housing isn't available with that little broken arm up there, but it's not preventing it from being mounted to a fishing pole, so you don't need to spend a lot of time with that. And then just clean it up, get the old greases out, and it'll be time to reinstall and replace. Alright, we've had that penetrating oil sitting on the top of this. I'm going to grab a little pick here, just run it around, get the old grease out of that shield. Eventually, if you didn't pay attention to that, it would work itself into the bearing itself. And this is usually stuff like micro salts and the like. And eventually it'll wear down your bearings. On this side you can actually see the bearings are in here. and those bearings are spinning freely. Now most of the time I'll tell you to oil bearings, but this is an open-ended bottom here, and I'm going to go away from that, and we're going to put some grease in there. I don't do it much, but I do it on these. That's because they started grease packed, and we can rest assured that it's fine to grease pack it. Just remember that's the bottom side of the gear when you go to reinstall. Here's your pinion gear. I'm going to clean that up. I'm going to use a hard brush to do that. I pull it away and I pull it onto this paper towel so that I don't contaminate the work area. If you see that there's a dried piece or two in there, which is what I'm noticing, I go for a pick and pull out the old stuff. Seems like where that's settled there is probably where the reel came to rest after it was done fishing. And it doesn't take much to pick it out of there, so do that. And then come on back with your brush, clean all of that up. That's your pinion gear. We're going to take our main gear now. We can go ahead and put that back on. Go ahead and load that back into our carrier. Get our collar. And it's always good, in my thinking, to reinstall the sub-assemblies that you can when you can. So I've just finished that little piece of it. There's no sense just moving on to something else if I can get this started and try to reset this and get these pieces out of my parts tray, because it seems like the more pieces you have laying around, the more they just knock about, and the next thing you know, you're looking for pieces somewhere because, well, they fell out somewhere. Just trying to get these started by hand. It's not easy. Trying to do a couple of things. I'm trying to align the hole while getting them started. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I got one started. Let's go ahead and tighten that down so that I don't have to wrestle with the hole alignment. If you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you want to know a little bit more about the history of the reels, maybe you want to know what the best reels are that Olympic made, those kinds of things, just leave them in the comments section. I'll try to answer them for you. I won't guarantee that I know the answer to everything, but I know a lot. If I can answer your question, I'll try to do that. Let's try another one here, see if we can do it this way, get it started. Me and small screws don't play well together, and so from time to time, well, let's just say we have our little ways. Well, that's two of them. I only need one more now. Tighten that one down, tighten this one down. I've been dipping the tip of the screwdriver into the glue, the blue grease to act as a glue. Kind of hold it while I try to reset the alignment and get that one in. So we can do that. And we're almost done with the top end assembly of the reel. If you were paying attention, you know we have two washers that go next. They sit on top of the bearing. And we have the collar goes on. A little bit of grease on that collar we can clean up. This is what happens when the reels sit for a while. So Scott found this one at a flea market, and those journeys are often interesting. So what usually happens is somebody was a devout fisherman, probably in the 70s here, maybe even into the 80s, stopped fishing, the reel got in storage for a while, and then the next generation or two or three came along and decided, well, they're never going to use it, and it gets parsed out to a flea market or some other way of selling it, a yard sale or what have you, and well, they get a second chance. But a lot of times when you get these reels, well, you're seeing it here, right? They haven't been used in a while, and all that old grease and stuff is just evaporated, dried, And well, before we go and take it out fishing again, even though this one was turning nice, you can see what the consequence would be if you took it out there. You'd find that eventually some of this grease would probably start to break free, jam your reel performance, and maybe even cause you to lose a fish along the way. So I would encourage you, if you do buy the reels in the used marketplace, eBay, whatever, don't have some blind faith in what you got there. Don't be afraid to take it apart, give it a service, and then rest assured that when you take it fishing, well, you won't have anything bad going on with the reel. That's the result of poor maintenance anyway. Alright, we've cleaned the main gear up. We did the same thing we did with the pinion gear there. We inspected all the teeth, made sure that they're nice and uniform and clean. We'll do this even though I'm noticing that it's clean. We'll show you that you should do the same thing here with a hard brush. Go back and make sure that all of that gets cleaned up. Then it's time to re-lube. I'm using Penn Precision Reel Grease. That's the blue grease that I referred to earlier as glue. But I find that it's convenient. It comes in 1 pound containers, which I use a lot of grease, and it's good. I haven't had any issues with it. Alright, we got 2 more pieces here that need to be cleaned, and then we can do the reassembly. And again, if you're enjoying this, I would encourage you to subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe to the channel, please use that notification button. That way you won't miss the ones that you really would like to see. And, well, you can skip the ones. I don't take any offense. You can skip the ones that maybe don't pertain to your type of fishing. Maybe the saltwater ones don't play very well in the Midwest. I got it. And same thing if you're in the Atlantic coast or either of the coasts like Scott here. And, well, you don't want to watch one on freshwater reels. That's okay. It's your choice. All right. We're going to grab our grease brush. This is the crosswind block. You want to make sure that crosswind gear, it gets grease on all 3 sides. The teeth are going to interact with the back of the main gear and that ancillary gear. So you want to get grease there. You want to get grease on the face so that the crosswind block can ride easily on that. Then you want to set this. When you go to set it, you need to make sure that you're interacting with that one help gear over there. And I'm just going to put a drop of oil onto that. Next up then, we want to just clean up the crosswind block. Now this one's easy. It's hard to not put it on the right way, but you should be taking pictures along the way to help you recall the position of some things. And crosswind blocks are notorious for being misinstalled. And if you can avoid that by taking pictures so that you know which side is up, so to speak, that's going to save you a lot of trouble when you come to put your reel back together again. Alright, we're going to line that up. Looking here, I didn't re-grease the pinion gear, so I'm going to take advantage of that right now to do that. We did oil and grease the bearing underneath. We've cleaned the case. It's time to reinstall the main gear then. That simply snaps in. And you want to just get a little bit of grease onto the stud where the case is going to close in on that. Alright, we're only missing the axle shaft now. The axle shaft gets a light coating of grease. We get the rotor. Now, we're in the off position, which is good because it pulls it away from that click ratchet there. If you had it in the on position, you might have a little bit of a wrestling match in trying to get that to seat properly. So remember, a good practice when you're taking these reels apart is to put that anti-reverse in the neutral or off position so that you don't have to struggle when it comes time to reinstall. And in some cases there's a spring-driven mechanism there that you're going to let fly if you're not careful. Alright, now we've got that done. We can slide that through. Come on down to the bottom, line it up properly, and You just want to work that in. And we had a little bit of an issue coming out, but we have no issue coming in because all of that grease has been cleared off. All right, time to go to your parts tray and get those two. And interestingly enough, for whatever reason, one was longer than the other. And remember, in our case, the long one came from the lower hole. Let's go ahead and put that back in. I don't know why that is. I don't know if there was two that one got lost and somebody found a substitute screw, or if there's a design underneath there where if you put the long one up top it would be bumping into the gear. I'm just not sure, but we know it was working when it came in and it was set up this way, so go ahead and put it back that way. Alright, that's done. Now what we can actually do is take the side plate now and load that on. Line up your 3 holes. We know that the 3 screws are the same, so it doesn't matter which slot you put them in on the side case. Let's go ahead and do that. If you have a reel that you're trying to service and maybe you can't find a reference video on it, if you leave a request for that in the comments, if I have one of those, I'll be happy to try and do that video for you. And more importantly, if I don't have one, I'll add it to my request list and try and make a point of doing that when one of those shows up in my shop, or if I find one in a local flea market or whatever. I do go back frequently to the list, try and see who's asked for a particular model, and if it's there, I do try to help out. Now, of course, that may not help you. You may have the reel in pieces right now, and waiting 6 months for a reel to show up in my shop. I get it. All right, let's see if we can do this one. I'm having a little bit of trouble winding that last one up. But 2 in should make it work for the other side. So 1 more to go. Now we should be able to get this one in below. Here we go. So what we want to do then is we want to check the drags in this reel. I'm thinking it's either going to be a Teflon drag or it's going to be a felt washer. Not sure. That would be appropriate for the period. But we'll see. Alright, that's all together. Next up we get that handle. Handle's coming through. It's a tight fit, and if you get dried grease in there like we did, it's could be problematic. Alright, remember what we did? We had a double here, right? We took this one and made sure that we put that together. I think that's the wrong screwdriver there. There we go, that's better. Kind of an interesting setup there, one on top of the other. And this one goes on. It's like a double-threaded collar. I like that. Different. So we've seen 2 different things here. We saw the auxiliary gear for stress release on the reel. You can give that a turn. Turns nice and easily, right? Beautiful. We'll put that side plate cap back on next. And then we'll just check the spool here to make sure that the drags are okay. Hold this, it's a spring, it's a C-clip spring. If you don't hold it, it will spring on you. This, for a big reel, does not have big drags. Max drag is a function of surface area. And well, we can, just as I said, that it makes a liar out of me because there is a lot. Next one up then is one of the fabric washers. Just make sure they're clean and flexible. They are. Then we want to go to an eared washer. That's the 2 points. They sit in the grooves of the piece. Then another one of the cleaned fabric washers. Then we want to go back to the keyed washer. Another fabric washer. The eared washer. Then we have the thick washer that goes up top. That's your stack. The spring goes in next, seat one side. Sometimes these are easy and sometimes they're not so easy. That seems to have gone easy enough. All right, load that in. And we just need our adjuster knob. And this one's just ready for a final test. Give it a tightening down. Make sure that your drag holds. It does, and then back it off. You don't want to compress those drags. Let's give it a run. Nice smooth operation. Make sure your bail operates. This has got a hammer bail. It's going to come over here and hit this like that. That's how it's going to trip. Nice reel overall. Scott, you got a winner there. And thank you for sending it in. Just going to collapse that handle to get it out of the way. And that's it. That's your Olympic LGVO 600 ball bearing system fishing reel. A nice example of the mid-70s Japanese manufactured reels. I hope you've enjoyed it. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do. To everyone, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.